Welcome to the SaaS Network Winter Virtual event, all around how aligned are Irish SaaS customer success and sales teams. That's the question we want to hear, and let's hear it from Adrian, Foley, Eleonora, Guagnino, sorry, Eleonora, from Teamwork, and then Robin and Seth are joining us from LearnUpon. Before we kick off, a couple of words on logistics. Again, this is not a traditional webinar style format. You're more than welcome to pop your questions throughout the session into the chat, and we'll have a dedicated Q&A section towards the end where we invite you to ask your own questions, right, and talk to us in person. Also, SaaS Network, you know, we've been around for a couple of years now. We're all there for scaling and learning together, growing together as an Irish SaaS nation. So if there's anything you need, any support from our end, text us anytime at info@saasnetwork.ie or our Twitter handle @SaaSNetIreland. I'll be sharing those details just in a minute. Also, this session will be recorded. So we'll follow up with everybody in here with a recording and email as a follow-on to this event, which you can hopefully share with your team. Everybody that just joined us in the audience, please say hi in the chat. What's the name of your company? What's your role and your company size, so we can get an overview. And then I'd hand it over to our panel, Seth, Robin, Eleonora, Adrian. Thank you so much for joining us and taking time out of your busy schedules. Really appreciate it and looking forward to the learning nuggets that you'll bombard us with hopefully in a second. Let's do some intros. Robin, I saw on LinkedIn, actually, one of your core values is scrappy. Can you tell us a bit about yourself and what you do at LearnUpon?
Yeah, no problems, Philip, and great to be part of this today, and nice to see everybody. Thanks for joining. So yeah, Rob Pearcy is my name. I lead the sales organization over at LearnUpon, which is an Irish company. We have an LMS, a learning management system. So I've been with LearnUpon only for the last 8 months, actually. Previous to LearnUpon, I was with a company called Qualtrics, who some of you may or not know, but I was there for almost 6 years. And then previous to that, I was with Dell for 13 years. Yeah, you mentioned scrappy. So, I mean, I think, you know, when you're building a business, you know, you've got to be kind of resourceful, you know, find a way to get things done. So that's kind of the essence of scrappy, really. And it's something that really I learned when I joined Qualtrics, which had, you know, 30 employees in EMEA, all based in Dublin. It was the first international office outside of Utah. And yeah, we didn't have a whole lot of resources like right back then. So that's something I just kind of brought with me as well, like to LearnUpon. And certainly we're having to be, you know, scrappy as well as we scale and grow the business.
Excellent, thank you. And Robin, I guess your background isn't necessarily SaaS, right? Can
Seth,
you tell us?
Seth, you mean, yeah?
Seth, sorry, yeah, Seth, isn't necessarily SaaS. So can you tell us a little bit about what brought you into the world of SaaS and what you do at LearnUpon as well?
Sure. Well, I think like most people in any customer success position, and especially in SaaS, you don't set out to do it, you fall into it by accident or coincidence. And I'm certainly one of those people. My roots are in frontline support. I was working for a kind of BPO provider on the vendor side in that line of work as a job through college, and started to get into some leadership roles, and it turned into more of a career than a job. And then I bumped into the client and started to think about how they think about us and our relationship with the world. And I thought, oh, this is very interesting. I could do something with this. And after a sideline kind of writing federal government grants for nonprofit organizations, which is another story entirely, found my way back into B2C SaaS with eHarmony, and that led to B2B, and here I am. One thing leads to another, and you know, until customer success, I think, as a profession becomes a little bit more mature, and there are classes taught in colleges and universities about how to do it, and that it's a career path. That's how most people are going to find their way here. At LearnUpon, I'm excited about the opportunity because, as I think many of your organizations are, it's at a point where I think of it as the awkward teenage years of a SaaS organization's growth, where we're not small anymore. We're not properly large and formal in many ways. And that's such an exciting and stimulating part of a business life cycle to be part of. I did it before at a company called Instructure, which was also an LMS maker, but focused more on the education space with their Canvas learning management system. Joined at about the same point, and the next several years of that experience were the most fulfilling in my professional life. I see all the same signs at LearnUpon. Really excited to help it grow and scale, and particularly our customer-facing teams.
Thanks for being here today, Seth. Eleonora, on to you. I guess you and Robin go way back, right? At Dell, we just realized a couple of weeks ago. So can you tell us about yourself and what you do at Teamwork?
Absolutely, Philip. Thanks so much. Yes, we didn't realize with Robin that we were going so way back into that. Absolutely, I'm sure we have a lot of connections in common. Yes, I've been working in IT for the past 15 years. I joined Teamwork a little over a year ago, and I'm leading the customer experience group, which is support, success, and advocacy. I started working in the area of customer retention in 2012. Initially focused on the renewal aspect, and I actually discovered my passion and then landed into the fantastic world of customer success while I was working at Veritas for actually a fantastic mentor and manager of mine that is actually attending this call, Tommy McShane. So hi, Tommy. That truly inspired me actually to go after my passion in customer success. What I love about customer success in Teamwork is that, of course, by providing a project management solution that truly enable our customers to effectively work with their customers, we don't only enable our customer to succeed, but we also enable their customer to succeed in their communication with our customers. So that's a little bit about me.
Brilliant, thank you. And Adrian, lastly, always on the lookout for some sales opportunities. Tell us about yourself, Adrian.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. So I'm going to start from the other end, I guess. And when I go back a few years, a little bit like Seth, I probably started off in a small organization that was looking to grow. It was an Irish company. It was called Horizon Technology. So it started with 6 or 7 employees as well and grew the business over many years. I then decided at some stage along that path to get into the corporate world, and I joined EMC. Spent 6 or 7 years in EMC. And then moved from EMC doing a very similar role into VMware. And I think one of the things that struck me as I was doing that was, of course, you know, a lot of the older IT sales leaders it was all about selling hardware. Robin will remember this actually from his Dell days, and Eleonora as well, I guess. So I wanted to get into software. I wanted to get some software experience onto my resume, understand what software selling was about. So I did that for, again, 6 years. And then the other element, I guess, was SaaS and moving into Teamwork, you know, has given me that experience over the last, I guess, 2.5 years here now in Teamwork. Really, really interesting. I've learned so much about the industry, about SaaS, about the things that you need to do and change that are so different to selling hardware, selling perpetual licensing models, and the way we need to change and adapt. And I think, you know, for today, this great fight we're going to have now with the CS guys, I think myself and Robin on the sales side and Eleonora and Seth on the CS side is going to be really, really interesting.
Great, yeah, we got that feedback.
Just in case anyone thinks Robin is a good guy, he supports Newcastle United, right? Just so we want to set things straight here, and everybody, you know, we open book, right? Because he sounds like a nice guy, but just want to lay the ground.
We're harmless in Newcastle. We're harmless.
It is on. Excellent. Yeah, we actually got the feedback for the event banner as well. It looks like a banner for some box fight or something. So I'll just share that, because what we did as a preparation for this event was actually asking Irish SaaS businesses on how aligned are their sales and CS teams. And there's some interesting insights that I just want to share, and we'll probably get the chance to dig into further as well. So 20 questions that we asked around accountabilities, compensations models, challenges, and tool sets in the Irish CS and sales teams. We got a small number of responses, not really representative, but giving some basic indications on what's going on in Irish CS and sales. The highlights that we want to call out at this stage is sales and CS. Most of the answers came from teams that manage between 30 to 50 accounts. And interestingly enough, the ratio between CS and sales reps is in 1:1 in 50% of the cases. While the top challenges for sales are new business, for CS, it's product adoption, the same things were actually mentioned as the key responsibilities for those two teams and the metrics the core metrics that they actually track. So seems like we still haven't figured it out completely yet, which is great. So looking forward to the panel's responses. And then in terms of tooling, CRM was mentioned the most, still living a lot in spreadsheets. Excel, help desk platform is another one that was mentioned. On the compensation side then, most compensation models are based on a base salary and bonuses in sales, and a base only in customer success, where we've seen just in terms of the outlook for 2021 and the planning operations, we've seen kind of a match with the challenges as well that were mentioned, predicted challenges for the year. COVID was mentioned a lot, but then also all around collaboration, alignment and tooling, automation, and accelerating adoption and new business sales. So we'll dig into those with the panel in a minute. Just to call out some of those metrics that we talked about, you can see core metrics in CS that were mentioned. That's great to see, daily, monthly, weekly active users. Sales challenges, as mentioned before, driving new business, also core priority of the sales teams. And then interesting one here, visibility into customer health, and we'll get the panel's opinion on how that works on their team as well in a minute. And then the CS challenges all around product adoption, churn, upsell and expansion. And lastly, the highlights on the collaboration, what teams are really driving to boost this collaboration between customer success and sales is quite balanced between quality account planning, customer advocacy meetings. Some are doing nothing, so hopefully we'll provide some information and some inspiration for your teams from the panel. Again, we'll be sharing some of this information as a follow-on, but if you need anything from us, let us know, info@SaaSnet Ireland, at SaaSnet Ireland, and we'll be happy to support you. Now, I guess COVID came up a lot of the times, right? And still relevant for all our businesses. Robin and Seth, can you talk a little bit about what initiatives have you been driving on your team to support your customers, and obviously from a sales perspective as well, with regard to COVID that you normally probably wouldn't have?
Sure. So I'll share a couple of different things about our response to COVID in customer success. And one will come from my prior job, because again, I've only been at LearnUpon for 5 months now, 4 months, something like that. So we tried to get out ahead of it and anticipate that our customers would have some challenges financially, and prepare in concert with our finance team some relief measures that we could offer. And in some cases, we did this responsively and reactively. In other cases, we did it proactively, with the intent being to sort of account for the fact that acquiring a customer in the first place is expensive. And it's much better for us, even if we have to give up some revenue right now, to hang on to that customer against the likelihood of a positive future than to sort of let them go and try to win them back. Because in the first place, we're making them a free agent, and they could pick any company when they, again, have funds for a tool like ours. And we don't want to give them that opportunity. So for instance, one approach that we took was to say, all right, we can give you the next 3 or 6 months free if you will sign an additional year extension to your agreement with us. So we locked in kind of time in exchange for short-term money, making it an equitable sort of transaction for both. And we would do this, again, responsibly, but then on the proactive side, we identified customers that lived in dangerous spaces. So hospitality, clearly a highly impacted area. And we also watched the news for news of our customers suffering layoffs and other really painful things as a result of COVID, and would reach out proactively to companies that we felt were at special risk, or that had just had a traumatic event of a financial sort, and offered the same sort of thing to them. Gave us an opportunity to come across as the partner we truly wanted to be, and then also to cut off future conversations, because we knew they were already talking about internally, how are we going to save money? We had a hunch that we were on the list of ways they were going to save money, and to go in and take our name off the table before the decision is made was super helpful. And so the proactive element of that was really quite successful. In the context of LearnUpon, and I think this is probably true of many of your businesses too, we clearly saw churn related to COVID-driven financial impacts. but there was an equal or even offsetting, more than offsetting growth from customers who were in a healthy place because they needed something like what we offered to negotiate the new world of COVID. People needed to learn, customers still needed to learn, employees still needed to learn. LearnUpon was a way to do that. And it became more important. Customers could no longer rely on in-person interactions and kind of work around the LMS in some ways. They were forced to use it. So in a way, our adoption problems, product adoption problems became significantly less scary with a lot of our customers. And we even saw expansion coming from many. And with that, I can probably slide over to Rob to get his perspective.
Yeah, thanks, Seth. So again, sort of similar, just thinking about the customer first, if you like, and how we help them, like from a prospect perspective, because my team, we're all on the hook for new business. It's purely new business, okay? So we'll maybe get into working together between myself and Seth later on in terms of expansion and how we go around that. But really, from a prospect perspective, we have an inside sales model anyway, okay? So pretty much all of my team, we have 12 AEs right now. When I joined, 7 months ago, 8 months ago, we had 7 AEs. We built that up to 12 now. Hired a couple externally, promoted a couple from biz dev internally, which is great. And I've got one person over in Sydney actually servicing our APAC market. It's small there for now, but we have one anyway, and we'll hire more. But more than 70% of our business comes from the North America market. So effectively, we've always been remote to our prospects and to our customers as well. Like, unless, again, Seth's team is kind of spread everywhere between North America, between Ireland to service the market or to service our customers. So we've always been remote, but things that we've kind of, we've always been remote to our prospects, if you like. But things that we've been doing is just listening to some of the challenges that the prospects have had, particularly around that contracting piece. So we typically lead with like a 3-year kind of multi-year contract. So we're taking into account that, look, maybe they don't want to commit for that long, so we do 12 months, but even boiling it down further to things like payment terms, where typically we're like payment upon invoice, that's our terms. We'll stretch that out to 30 or 60 days maybe to give them an opportunity just on cash flow, or even do things like quarterly or semi-annual billing, where typically pre-COVID it was always kind of annual upfront in terms of the payment term. So those are the things that we kind of have had to adapt to and really just listen to the prospect in order to get new business over the line. And I think they thanked us for that. Our flexibility. We have a really great CFO, Derek Kavanagh. He's a Donegal man, and so he's worked with us. Certainly myself and my team to be able to put these things in place. Once we've fed that back up to Derek and to Brendan, our CEO, as well. Like, they're very hands-on, and they want to help as well. We don't want to shoot ourselves in the foot when it comes to generating new business. And these are the type of things we've had to do.
Great. So flexibility in multi-year contracts, right? Flexibility with regard to the customers, obviously. Eleonora, Adrian, I know you've been working together, right, throughout this whole COVID period as well, right? What was it that you've been driving on your teams?
Yeah, well, I'd say just to build on, I guess, what Robin said there, we found it exactly the same. I think we had customers who came and, may have had cash flow issues at a particular point in time as we were trying to close deals off. So, in conjunction with the guys in finance, we looked at extending payment terms. We actually went and did, 6 monthly terms or even quarterly terms. And we pretty much, tried, I think as Seth said earlier, was to hang on to that customer, right? Just make sure that they keep using Teamwork during this very, very difficult period. And I think the other things that we saw as well was that, we saw the sales cycle get a bit longer. I think, people were, again, as Seth mentioned earlier, they were looking at the things they could maybe change and cut back on. So in a lot of cases, the cycle of getting new deals across the line actually took a bit longer. The number of people who were getting to sign off on deals was more now than potentially what it was pre-COVID. And I think, all in all, I think we showed an awful lot of empathy to our customer base just to make sure that we helped them through this very, very difficult situation, right? I guess back in 2019, nobody was saying, hey, how do we plan for a pandemic in 2020, right? It was something that caught everybody by surprise. So I think we worked really, really hard, showing the empathy, figuring out ways of helping the customers, trying to get the deals across the line. when and if we could, as quickly as we could. And I think as well, one of the other things we did, and we probably saw a bit more of, was things like POCs. So just helping customers to de-risk the decision to go and actually make a purchase, right? And you know, again, getting involved with the guys in CS to make that POC successful. They then feel an awful lot more comfortable, and they go ahead and make the acquisition or purchase at that point in time. So I think, you know, as the lad said, you know, it was really about hanging on to the customers and doing the right thing during this period, which we're still trying to do, obviously, right?
Brilliant. Eleonora, on the CS side, yeah. Is there anything you'd like to add?
Absolutely, Philip. So on the CS side, I will say that we did three things that I think helped us dramatically during COVID. The first one was we tripled and quadrupled the amount of webinars that we were doing, and we diversified the webinars, you know, thinking about the main challenges that our customer could have been facing while bringing, let's say, additional resources, additional staff members onto teamwork, you know, in order to effectively collaborate while being all remote. So we launched series about how to effectively work remotely. We launched lab series for our customers in order to learn from each other, you know, and work alongside ourselves, you know, and become more proficient with our product. And we truly were intentional in terms of trying to provoke, you know, more engagement with our customer on a one-to-many basis in order to then lead on a one-to-one basically conversations. Then in alignment absolutely with what Seth mentioned, basically we built an offboarding process in order to offer support to any of our customer that was churning, and whenever the customer was churning due to financial reasons, you know, or due to furlough, we offer them a payment break. Of course, our value and culture are extremely important, you know, at Teamwork. So the customer centricity came through in this type of approach. And then we worked alongside sales, absolutely, launching complementary onboarding services that could have easily been monetized at a different point in time. But the objective was, of course, you know, to, let's say, align from a sales and CS perspective in order to truly support our customer, you know, and the new customer joining Teamwork at this challenging time.
Excellent. Three great examples that could be implemented, right, straight away. I guess currently, right, we're finding ourselves, it's January 2021, probably for some companies, a more difficult year ahead than others, but it's planning season, right, or hopefully finished by now. But I guess, Seth and Robin, when you kicked off the planning process for 2021, you just started, both of you just started working together as well, but I'd love to hear a bit more about how, especially in light of collaboration between both of your teams, how do you kick off your planning processes? What does it look like?
I love to have a metrics basis for hiring in customer experience roles, driven by, you know, whatever makes sense in a given context. And I've used different metrics in different places. I didn't have a great foundation in what would be the right metrics in LearnUpon, obviously, this time around. So I sort of had to go on what exists today and what the team perceived as gaps between what we had now and what we actually needed, and then try to extrapolate that out over the coming year. It was sort of confounded for me by the fact that we're also implementing segmentation, which I think will come up later on in the agenda here. And thus, you know, the ratios we used in the past were not the best predictor of what we needed in the future. So I kind of drew upon rules of thumb from prior experience and have set my planning up that way. And here's hoping it works out. I believe it will. Rob and I don't have yet a coordinated approach to staffing and ratios, but I think that's going to emerge in the coming year for reasons that we'll mention in answer to other questions.
Yeah, absolutely. I think from sales side as well, like, I mean, you know, we just come off the back of an unusual year, let's say, right? So kind of the best laid plans that we put down coming into 2020, we're off the back of a very strong, a very solid 2019, right? So, you know, solid growth, you know, in excess of 50% year on year. Then, you know, we put I suppose I wasn't here at the start of the 2020 planning cycle, but, you know, we had like a phasing in place for our new business revenue, which was like, you know, 20%, 20%, 20%, and then jumping to that kind of classical SaaS model, 40% in Q4, right, where a lot of businesses spend their money. But But what we actually saw in reality was like, that kind of initial COVID shock. So, we had, 18% of our revenues come through in that kind of first quarter. And then given the nature of the business for LearnUpon, like we're an online, learning management system. So obviously the world has gone remote, like people are starting to work, from home. We kind of saw an uptick in revenue then during Q2. That continued on Q3, and then Q4 kind of dipped a little bit, even though it was our biggest quarter, and a good record quarter. But kind of what we planned for wasn't actually what happened in terms of how that helped. So what we've done in terms of the planning for this year is take that into account. Obviously, we're still in a bit of an unnatural situation, or a new norm with COVID, but we kind of phased it slightly different this time, okay, in terms of 25% for the first half of the year, and then down for Q3. I think if everyone's vaccinated, probably the whole world is going to take holiday in Q3, so we're not hedging any bets on Q3, and then back up in Q4. But we've got very, very hands-on CEOs, hands-on CFO. Pretty much built the company up. We do the planning together. Kind of as it began in November, multiple meetings talking about what the quota should be. I even rewrote our whole sales compensation model, our quota plans, things like that. So and again, it took a lot of, I suppose, nailing that down, hammering it out, because again, there's still a lot of uncertainty about this year and what's going to happen. Plus we took on a new partner, like Summit Partners is our first kind of Series A investor, if you like. So we took a large sum of money from them. So we got to use that wisely as well and scale the teams. But we're also accountable now as well, So we wanted to make sure we got planning right. Come back to me at the end of the year, Philip and team, and I'll tell you how we finished, right?
We'll hold you to it. Curious about the Q3, obviously. Adrian, Eleonora, question to you. You've always been working together for a while now, and I'd love to hear how has the planning process actually been reiterated and changed, right, over the while, and where are you right now, right?
Yeah, so I guess for myself and Eleonora, we've put together a territory mapping process in place, which we started probably about 9 months ago. And the idea, of course, was to figure out what territories we had in the US and in EMEA, APJ, and look to map the sales teams to the CS teams. Try to make sure that, a sales guy was only dealing with one CS rep at the time rather than dealing with 5 or 6. And, just try to get that consistency, get the guys working together. We then went into QBRs every quarter where we get the sales and the CS guys together. Those sessions actually were very interesting because they tended to show us whether we actually were getting good alignment, right? So you could tell from the session, whether sales were actually talking to CS, whether the CS guys were doing something completely different than what the sales team were, and so on. And we started to get better at understanding the territory, understanding the customers within that territory, and what's the best way to serve, I guess, the customer at that point. I'd also say, and we're just going through a very, I would say, robust planning process for 2021 in Teamwork, and it's built on, the funnel. I think we've really got to understand our funnel a lot better in the last 12 months. Everything from trial to MQL to SQL to SAO, and then revenue broken down into new business and expansion. And I think for me then, from myself and Eleonora, it's about planning things like, again, the territory. It's about planning things like the professional services sales that we're doing, the onboarding and the training that I'm sure Eleonora can speak to. All those critical components now that we know drive success into a customer base, right? And I think I've learned a huge amount. I think our team has learned a huge amount in the last 12 months by understanding what onboarding really looks like, what adoption looks like, and what the utilization we see in our customers. So I think we've spent an awful lot of time getting that planning right, and I think we're going to start to see the fruits of that now as we go through 2021.
Yeah, it completely echo, what Adrian mentioned. I think the cross-functional collaboration there was pivotal. I think at times we were speaking 2-3 times a day, thinking about, okay, what's going to truly move the needle, and in partnership we decide, okay, let's park specific services. let's do proof of concept, but only on specific segments, because that's where we're going to see the results, for example, on delivering additional services, and that then sales, of course, is going to be able to monetize at a later stage through expansion. So I think from a planning process perspective, something probably worth sharing is the fact that we started the planning process from the customer journey, and we spent a lot of time thinking about, okay, what is the ideal customer experience? And then from a CS perspective, I truly thought about 3 components that Seth mentioned, which are people, systems, and technology. Depending on the CS segments, depending on the go-to-market strategy, depending on whether you're going to be more high touch with your customers or more at scale in a high-velocity business, that requires different skill set. Depending on the type of product, like with our suite of product, we have more products that are focused on, let's say, the challenge of customers going through a change management curve, project management, and more technical products like desk. So the skill set required in order to effectively engage with customer and drive adoption there is different. So from a people perspective, having the right people in place, able to effectively engage with sales in the right way, it's and the customer, of course, it's necessary. From a system and procedures perspective, of course, we follow the EOS methodology, in teamwork. So absolutely ensuring that rocks are defined, that results are quantifiable is essential. And from a technology perspective, I would say also ensuring that there is the right technology in order to support, the customer success motion, because customer success is still a relatively new function, I would say, especially in EMEA. We're a few years behind, of course, our brother and sister, in mainly Silicon Valley and in the US. But it's essential to invest in a technology that truly allow the digital journey in order to ensure customers are continuously nurtured, and adoption, become truly serving the customers and not serving the company itself, pushing its own objective.
And so
Yeah.
I'd
Philip,
love to stay with you.
Just one thing I'd
go
like
ahead,
to add
Adrian.
there as well. I think one of the key things, and for anybody who's in sales on the call this evening, you often feel that little bit of friction maybe with the product teams in the organization. And I think one of the things that we planned and put in place during the year was, for myself and Eleonora, as I guess part of the customer facing part of teamwork, was we put in monthly workshops. And it really was about, getting the customer facing teams together to talk to the product teams about, the feedback, what our customers were saying, what we were seeing as we were talking to those customers. And it's been really, really helpful, because it's got an awful lot more interaction going between product and the customer facing teams. And, we're trying to track requests, we're listening, as I said, giving feedback to the product guys. And it is something now that we have in our planning. We've got one of those every single month. On I think the 3rd week of every month, we do this for an hour and a half, a workshop, and it's really proved very, very helpful, I think. And it's just created that culture of more alignment, talking to each other about what we need to see, and what, more importantly, what our customers are asking us to look at.
Hey, that actually, just on that one, Adrian, really, really glad you raised that one, because we've done the same thing here, so I think what we kind of missed a little bit, certainly towards the end of last year, was just that communication from product about, what's going on, how things are going. Yes, you can get access to the roadmaps and see what's coming, but what we've agreed, and Lisa, who's our head of product, she's amazing, and she's actually said, look, what about we step into your sales team meeting every week, just take a standing kind of 10-15 minute slot, and it's there to feedback as well as the other kind of feedback loops as well, like with the product team, product managers, for the bigger ticket items. But even just having that weekly kind of regular sync. So we'll do next week a roadmap session. This is what's happening. These are the launch dates. And then thereafter, it's 15 minutes every week, and it's yeah, we can talk about anything. And that allows that kind of feedback loop, as opposed to things getting lost in maybe an intro, in an app that we use to share dialogue, or Slack or something like that. So yeah, I'm glad you raised that, because that's something that definitely is going to help us this year as well, because a lot of the good feedback comes from those prospecting calls that we're doing. Why we're losing deals or why we're winning them. And just having that kind of really tight alignment with product I think it's going to help us kick on,
Yeah. And we have a great solution to help you manage all that stuff, Robin, if you want to hang on after the call.
Ah, teamwork, is it?
Yeah, funnily enough.
I think I mentioned it in the introduction, right? Always looking for a good sales opportunity here. Thanks, Adrian. I want to stay with you, Adrian and Nora, just for a moment, because you talked about initiatives like territory planning, QBRs, joint QBRs, right? Product workshop involving the customer-facing teams to bring their teams together. Tying that back to what we've seen as survey results as well, the major challenges that the sales team has in terms of new business expansion and the CS team product adoption as well. What are the initiatives on top of those, right, that you think can help kind of target or tackle those two challenges? One, the sales challenge of driving revenue, and on the other hand, the adoption challenge as well. Is there anything that you would be able to call out here?
Yeah, well, for me, I guess on the new business side, I think, again, 2020 has been a very interesting year for teamwork to try to identify what our ICP actually looks like, right? You know, certainly when I started just over 18 months ago, I always felt that we were selling to lots of sectors, lots of departments. You know, you could see customers in education, in healthcare, in finance, all around the world. So it was a very, very broad spread. And I guess in some cases, you know, companies would say that's a fantastic problem to have, right? Because you can sell to everywhere. But of course, what it meant was that we potentially couldn't become subject matter experts in particular areas. So I think the business did a fantastic piece of work to understand, you know, who were our happiest customers, who were the ones with the highest NPS, the highest delighted scores, the lowest churn, who were getting the most value from teamwork, right? Who were we making the happiest? So we went off, did an immense piece of work. It took quite a few months to try to understand where was that ICP. And we came to the conclusion, and the data supported us to show, I guess, that professional services organizations were our strongest sweet spot. That's where we should be focusing. That's where we need to become leaders. That's where we need to become, I guess, subject matter experts and become trusted advisors. So we've started that journey and process, you know, from training and development of our team, changing some of the things we do, changing our website. I think, you know, a lot of our new development will be focused in on this particular area. And that's where I see a lot of our growth now coming in 2021. On top of that, we're seeing, I guess, better conversion rates. So if I look at my funnel, I can see better conversion rates coming from those ICP customers than the non-ICP customers, which makes a lot of sense. And actually, we're early days, but we're seeing a higher average deal size coming from the ICP customers than the non-ICP ones. So, you know, I won't say it's revolutionary, but it definitely means that we are now getting very focused in on this segment. In my view, we want to become the #1 provider in there. We want to become a household name. And that focus potentially allows us to get there. So that's where I see you know, a lot of that new business growth coming from in 2021.
Right. So focus on the ICP, right? Find out who they are, obviously, and focus your teams on those. Eleonora, Seth, in terms of customer adoption as well, and tying that back to kind of what can sales do as well to support, right, product adoption, I guess. Is there anything you want to call out on that front?
From my side, I would say an excellent qualification. I think an excellent qualification of what the customer wants to truly achieve, you know, in the sales process is then enabling to truly set success goals, you know, for the customer that we can easily report against. We work very, very closely with Adrian and team on building a warm handover process from sales on to customer success. And this is extremely important because it's enabling us to then reduce time to value. You know, so if before there was a time lag, let's say, of even just 2 weeks between the deal being closed and customer success engaging with the customers for the high touch deals, now we are gaining those 2 weeks. And we are also kicking off the adoption conversation adoption, and in our case, of course, the workflow mapping with the customers when it's most important for them because they just completed the investment. And we all know that priority shifts very, very quickly. So the biggest fear that I have in customer success when it's a matter of driving adoption are the customers that are pushing out the implementation phase, because it needs to start immediately. Actually, I think it needs to start even before. I was reading, of course, a few articles, around planning and how sales and customer success can effectively partner, over the last few weeks. And I'm sure you all came across that. And there was something that truly resonated with me in relation to the fact that you realize that customer success is working when it becomes visible for sales. Not because maybe there are services that are being charged, but when sales is referencing to customers, in 3 months, you're going to be able to have your first EBR, and we're going to be able to follow up on what we are discussing right now. That's where I feel the trust is gained from a customer perspective, and that's where I feel the customer is truly perceiving that we have them basically at the core of how we operate, irrespectively of departments.
I'll say two things. They're related to one another, and one of the behaviors that Rob's team is especially good at, and that is discovery with our customers. He's implemented some methodology there that gives a little structure to that, and his team does a really good job of finding out what the customer is setting out to hire us to do before the sale happens. So two things coming out of that. One, we've been on a journey over the last 5-6 years from being a product that is best fitted and intentionally designed for smaller customers and organizations to one that is ready for the mid-market, one now that is ready for enterprise organizations. A lot of that work has fallen on product. A lot of it falls on success and support to be ready to meet the expectations of that kind of client. But the sales team all along the way has been really good at asking customers very clearly what they'd like to accomplish and being transparent with them when we may not be the best fit for that yet. And I'm aware of a number of specific cases in which the salesperson has said to a prospect, we may want to think about doing this in a year as opposed to now, because frankly, we may not be up to your expectations in this area just yet. And the psychology of that is interesting, because we have a number of prospects now who have said, no, like let's engage now. Let's do a pilot. We'll hang on to our legacy solution for a year because we do need to do that thing that you can't do yet. But we love that you're talking to us in these terms. So I guess what I'm saying about that is that we get customers through the door with pretty realistic expectations and a very clear-eyed view of what our product can and cannot do. That's, for really obvious reasons, fantastic for success. But the other part of this is that discovery yields what Eleonora was referring to in the way of actionable short-term objectives for success to plan and measure themselves against. The bane of, I guess, SaaS customer success is that you get perhaps a stakeholder who has a bee in their bonnet to acquire a certain platform or tool and goes and does that and hasn't really thought through what the next step should be. And I love what Eleonora said about their attention span. It just, like, they move on to the next thing because that's their role and it's what they do. They're an executive. And their team, who is left to implement this thing, is left sort of shrugging. Rob's team does a great job of pressing customers to talk about and articulate what they really want to accomplish, and giving us some good notes that we can take and work from in the earliest days when we need to be making a lot of progress. I think half of the value that a customer success team will ever give to a customer, no matter how long you keep them, is delivered in that first 90 days, because you help them make critical decisions at that point that have a vastly disproportionate effect on the long-term value they get out of your product compared with what you do in month 4 or 5 or 10 or 12 or 50. So this discovery habit and ethic that Rob has instilled in his team has been very helpful for us.
Just to add to that, Seth, because it's a good call out. I think that was one of the challenges that I saw when I came into LearnUpon, 8 months ago, was that we didn't really have really structured or robust sales process. So that was something that I just operated to, previously at Qualtrics, previous 6 years. So just implementing that, I think like May, June last year, getting that down has really helped to what Seth talks about. But the other thing as well, alongside the sales process, has been kind of an opportunity management methodology. And that's really where that discovery comes into play. And what we use here at LearnUpon is called MEDDIC. Some of you on the call who are in sales may know that or may not. Some people may use BANT, or methodologies like that. But I found MEDDIC to be really good. It was really ingrained in us at Qualtrics. And really for a sales leader, and any of my team, I have one other sales manager who I hired in November, and I'll be hiring more through this year. But that's something that you can really have a good coaching conversation with an account executive around really what is it that the prospect's looking for, and trying to tie back the value to our solution, because that's where we win. We don't win on price, or we don't win on product. It really comes back, are we solving the problem, and are we helping to deliver value? So, Medic, for anyone who's interested, definitely research that. It was, born out of PTC in the US. It helped them scale. They never missed a quarter, for something like, I think it was 50 odd quarters, by using that type of methodology. And it really helps uncover as well, not just kind of the things that you know about the prospect, but it really helps you understand what you don't know. And that's the bit that really adds a lot of value. We just eke that out, and it's more of a conversation then with the prospect as opposed to trying to sell to them.
One of the things as well, I'd say, Robin, on the back of that we've had really good success with is, and I'd say this to, again, anybody who's running a sales team, is to give the sales team some coaching on what the CS guys are doing in that first 60, 90 days. So for example, I hear the sales guys now talking about success when they're talking to customers, talking about how important onboarding is, because we all know that, adoption is critical, and so many, application implementations have failed because of adoption. So one of the things I think that we've done with Eleonora is we've trained our sales guys to just understand the language of CS, understand what happens in the first 90 days. And as they speak to the customers, then they can actually speak to that, talk to the customer about their success and why it's so important for them and for us. And it just, brings more alignment with the two teams.
And thanks, Adrian. Seth, obviously, Robin. Listen, we're almost approaching time here, and we'd love to have a couple of questions in from the audience, obviously. So keep them coming, right, on the chat. I guess what we'd love to do with the panel as well, quick and easy answers to a couple of questions I think that might definitely be relevant and came through the survey as well. The first one was actually asked by Noel here. Noel is asking thought process behind monthly versus annual upfront payments, pros and cons. Any thoughts from you folks?
Yeah, I think from my perspective, monthly is very, it's a lot more admin. Okay, it's more difficult to manage, and if you haven't got a full team of finance people, accounting people, then it's tough to manage. Okay, so one thing that's interesting, and I actually only learned, more recently here as well, but because I've only ever known kind of annual upfront billing, for the last 6 years in SaaS. But in LearnUpon, I think even only as recently as maybe 2 or 3 years ago, we were offering that monthly billing, okay, for some of our price plans. And when the decision was made by the leadership team to say, hey, look, we're actually going to an annual upfront billing cycle now, the sales team's all like, whoa, we can't do that. It's going to really wreck, we're going to lose all our business and all this. And it was a big change for them, at the time, because they've been used to going through, hey, it'll cost you X amount per month. And then, you can turn it on or off whenever you want, to having this kind of no, it's going to be an annual contract with upfront billing. So really there was a sticker shock there. It was like, oh, how do we do this? How do we explain this to our prospects? But actually when it was rolled out, they found the opposite. It was actually, well, that was kind of the industry norm. That was kind of standard. So don't be worried if you are on monthly billing at the moment and you're going to go to annual. I think there's a little bit of a kind of from the sales team would be like, oof, it's not what we do now. But I think it's just industry standard. It's the norm. I'll be surprised if, other companies on the call here aren't doing that. And again, then you get into even, getting into multi-year contracts, and that is becoming the norm. Certainly we lead with, minimum 3 year now, and we're not getting a huge amount of pushback. It actually gives us leverage to negotiate bigger kind of annual fees, if you like. If you go to, say, a 2-year contract, okay, well, that'll cost you an extra 5%. If you want to go to a 1-year contract, that'll cost you an extra 10%. Okay, so it kind of incentivizes them to go for 3 years. Plus, then we get the tie-in, we get the lock-in with the client, and then I suppose from Seth's point of view, it helps to know we've got that predictability, and they're going to be a customer. Because again, when prospects are buying our stuff, let's say, and that's for anyone on the call, is it really just for a year or a month or is it for a longer term, cycle? And I believe, like, obviously an LMS is something that you don't just turf it out, like, at the end of the year and go get a new one. It's going to be a long-term investment.
Yeah. I mean, building on what Rob said, and I'm sure Eleonora would say the same thing. Monthly contracts are nightmarish for success because the customer is perpetually up for renewal, and there's no opportunity to, I think, make a strategic long-term plan for success with the customer, because you don't have really meaningful deadlines to build up against. So when you have a 2 or 3 year contract, that's ideal. You can say, let's be thoughtful about this with the customer. What do you really think you can accomplish in your first year? Because I know you want to transform this or that part of your business, and that's why you're bringing in a system like ours. But is that reasonable, given everything else your people have to do in their day jobs, to think that they're going to fully embrace this full-blown learning process that you want to put in place in 12 months? I think not. But if we only have a 1-year contract, in our minds, the denominator is total number of seats or portals or courses or whatever it is that you're selling. And the numerator has to be something pretty close to yielding a 100% outcome to feel like you'll get a complete renewal at the end of that 1-year term. If you've got a 3-year or a 2-year, you can say, let's get halfway there in year 1, and by the end of year 2, let's get where we need to go, and the customer can feel better about that. It's just, how often will the purchasing decision come up? And if it is monthly, I mean, I think that's implied in the question. I think that's pretty common sense, but you don't want monthly if you can avoid it, because there's that risk element every single month.
Great. Maybe Eleonora, bringing a question here as well that, sorry, just Killian asked from Quick Minutes as well. In terms of POC, pilot scheme, what's your thought on freemium? And maybe you can tie that into that topic, monthly, annual contracts then as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So from a POC perspective, that's very, very timely. Actually, we met with Adrian and the sales team, just actually at the beginning of the year, because we launched POC and it became very, very popular. All of the sudden paid POC, which is, if you want, an extension of our trial period, where we provide, of course, onboarding services to our customer, and they are paying, of course, for the licenses that they are using at that point in time. So the services component is heavily discounted. And the strategy there, of course, and Adrian can elaborate more from, of course, a sales perspective, but from a CS perspective was, okay, let's cap the POC to something that is tangible, and we can define if it's a success, yes or no. So from our perspective, teamwork, it needed to be one team, it needed to be one specific workflow, and we needed to have success objectives like, what are we trying to measure? Are we trying to measure effectiveness of communications? Are we trying to measure the number of risks that are being logged? Are we trying to estimate basically the workload, for each individual projects? Because if there are no clear success metric in the POC, then realistically speaking, whoever is supporting basically the customer from a CS perspective, it's just going to try to do everything, and it will never be enough. From a monthly perspective, I echo what Seth said. Of course, undeniably, when there are inactive customers that are on monthly, I think every CS leader is asking himself the question, which is, okay, what do I do? Do I wake them up? Or if I, of course, provoke a conversations, are they going to churn because they realize that they are paying for a software that they don't use? While with annual customer, that's not a problem. That's where I see advocacy being pivotal from a community perspective with monthly customers, because it's way easier, to influence this cohort of customer when you have a champion inside the organization that is going to speak on basically our behalf. And that's where I see definitely community, of course, LearnUpon, learning management system, etc., being extremely important in order to develop strong support within the customer sites.
Brilliant. Here's another question from Greg coming in. Maybe Adrian, you want to take that one on upsells and expansion. Best success here, who leads it, who manages it, basically who owns it, right? Who owns expansion? How does it look like?
Yeah, and I think again, I've learned an awful lot about this over the last few months, I'd say, because we've started to put in some health scores for our customers. And of course, as Peter quite rightly pointed out to me, you have to have healthy customers in order to expand or upgrade them, right? And we are now putting in, I would say, a sequence of customers coming on board, getting them successful with our entry-level plan, which is how they will deliver, you know, the basics of using teamwork, and then assisting them to grow up to the next plan and up to a scale plan. So for me at the minute, it's Eleonora's job to try to make those customers healthy, okay, get them into the right place. When they're in the right place, hand them over to us in the sales team. And then it's our job to try to expand them or upgrade them up to the next levels. And I think, you know, this is something I think we're going to be working very, very hard on in 2021. We've set out some parameters now around what those health scores look like. We've been doing that for a while, actually, but I think that needs to be refined and continue to be refined. But I would say it feels to me it's Eleonora's job to get them healthy, and my job then to try to get them to expand and upgrade over time. So we get those guys into a good place and then have the conversation with them.
Excellent. Robin, Seth, how does it look like at LearnUpon? And to get more tactical as well, how does an app like a healthy customer end up in Robin's expansion pipeline, right?
Yeah, work in progress. We're working toward a place in the near future where we won't have a handoff per se. Salespeople will stay actively involved with accounts, especially those that show good evidence of expansion opportunity over the long haul. And it's more like who's front seat and who's back seat at a given time in the relationship. My expectation of CSMs is that they are going to be having regular touchpoint calls with stakeholders in our organizations, and especially in the larger customer organizations where the CSM to our account to CSM ratio is lower. They ought to be listening for the kinds of signs that suggest that there's an expansion opportunity available. When it becomes clear that there is one available, they create the opportunity. And the rule of thumb that Rob and I have agreed to start with is that when the opportunity is essentially, I'd like more of what I have already. So, you know, I'm already using LearnUpon to do this. I want to do it 10% more. Like, that's something that a CSM should close because there isn't a lot of selling to do there. On the other hand, when it's essentially a new opportunity where maybe another part of the same organization wants to start doing something that they had not previously done in LearnUpon, or when a new use case emerges for a group of people that had already been using LearnUpon, like I was using it to train my internal team, and now I'd like to train my customers as well. There's selling to be done there, and I firmly believe that sellers should sell, and Rob's team are the best equipped and most skilled to do that. And we need to engage them on those opportunities. So that's our tactical kind of rule of thumb to start with. And I'm sure it will evolve over time. But again, we're coming from a place where our view from a success perspective on expansion has been, oh, the customer came and asked for more seats. I suppose I can facilitate that, right? There hasn't been very productive or proactive at all. It's been very reactive. So we can get better.
Great. And I guess one question that, or a theme that came through before, I know we're approaching time, we'll just wrap up after this one because I think it came up twice now. It's on the handover process, right? From sales to CS. Any kind of more tactical best practice advice, Robin, Adrian, and Eleonora, that you could give there? How does it look like at a good handover?
I'll repeat a little of what I said before. Rob's team's commitment to discovery is crucial to this. So we have implemented in Salesforce literally fields for his MEDDIC model. And if you look at the MEDDIC model, which is MEDDIC, it's an acronym, you'll see that the 6 questions that his team are asking are crucial insights for success. And if his team have completed those fields during the sales and discovery and sales process, we're in a really good place for a handoff virtually at the point of close. We need to, again, another tactical suggestion, get to a place where there's more of a consistent relationship between a given salesperson or a couple of salespeople and a CSM so that they have regular coordinated meetings and they can talk about it in terms of a pipeline. So, you know, salesperson A says, I've got 3 deals that are going to close this quarter that are large. CSM says, okay, I'll be the receiving CSM for those. Let's talk a little bit about that. And then they have a couple of touch points, maybe bi-weekly, as they move through the sales process. At the point of close, they're already read in on the account and ready to go. But that requires some additional infrastructure, sort of territory and alignment work that Rob and I are working on together. That's just the way I've had it work best in other places.
Brilliant. Eleonora, anything else to add?
we are currently tactically managing, of course, our handover through teamwork, of course, our platform. So in project, you know, our sales team is opening a task as soon as basically the customer is ready to be managed basically and handed over, you know, to the onboarding team. And as Seth mentioned, basically, we are going to start doing with Adrian what probably Seth and Robin are already doing, which is more of a warm handover via phone, you know, where in the high strategic deal, what we define big bets or the higher level accounts, basically, we're going to have the CSM joining the closing call with sales in order to truly ensure that the next steps is already set up and the next meeting is already booked.
Brilliant. Thanks for that. I know people have to go, so we don't want to hold you from giving back your evening. Obviously, really want to thank Adrian, Eleonora, Robin, Seth for joining us for the last hour. Hopefully for people in the audience, this was helpful. There was a couple of nuggets that you can take away and implement in your teams tomorrow. We'll follow up with the recording, obviously. We'll follow up with a couple of the nuggets that were talked about here. Territory planning, QBRs, those product workshops, right? To the handover as well. Also, if you need more information, if you want to get in touch with Eleonora, Adrian, Robin, Seth, ourselves, info@SaaSnetwork.Ireland, info@SaaSnetwork.ie. Send us an email, we'll connect you. All of you are obviously on LinkedIn as well, so I guess no harm in connecting with the guys, and we're totally open to facilitate more of this, right? To give you an outlook, in the summer, we'll have another event. Also would love your feedback on what you would like us to dig in more. We had April Dunford, the obviously awesome author, the last time on marketing positioning. Today, we dug into CS and sales. Let us know what we can do, what's most relevant for you, right, in the summer, and we'll keep you updated. Well, thanks again. Thanks so much, folks, to the panel for joining us, and thanks everyone for joining us tonight. Have a good one.